Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. Today I'm joined by the team from Iagon. I mentioned them in a few previous videos, and it's great we've been able to set up a call to find out what's going on with the project. So today I'm joined by team members Navjit and Trym. So very welcome, guys. Great to have you on.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us, Paul.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Looking forward to finding out more about what you guys are doing. So let's jump straight into it. Who are you guys? And then we'll go down the rabbit hole of what you're building.
Sure. I mean, Trym, you want to go first, or?
Yep, sure. I can go ahead. So, hey, my name is Trym. Some of you might have seen me around the space. I am a crypto consultant working in the Cardano space. I worked as a system designer and algorithm designer for Iagon. So I made the file distribution mechanism. I worked a lot on the token utility, some of the system designs of the project, and the business model. And I've sort of moved on a little bit in the space, but I'm keeping on as a technical advisor and helping out the team that is sort of implementing some of the designs at the moment.
Hi everyone. My name is Navjit. I'm the CEO of Iagon. So I've been in the space for a while now. I've been working with Iagon since 2017, since we founded, and we've been working towards creating a decentralized storage and compute platform since then. We migrated over from Ethereum recently to Cardano in 2021, and Trym's been with us since we moved over to Cardano.
Great. So look, for people who haven't heard of the project before, can you give the high level? You've kind of touched on bits of it there, but give the high level of what the project is, and then we'll jump into the individual aspects of it.
Sure. So basically, if you want to look at it in a simple way, it's like Airbnb for storage and compute. To explain that a little bit further, and what we do uniquely is that we learn the behavior of resource providers in different variables. That includes performance, availability, trustability, location, things that are important to the end user that they might want to be compliant with. For example, location is important for GDPR compliance. Data cannot be transferred outside the EU. So we specifically cater to compliance as well. That makes us unique compared to other storage protocols. We also building dApps on top of the infrastructure to gain adoption. So dApps like Ledger Flow. We have a couple of dApps on Catalyst proposal, also proposed Statur and Fluxion. So these dApps, we want to create use cases that we think that will also unknowingly use the storage and possibly the compute in the future. Right now, our focus is specifically on the decentralized storage. Next year, we're going to be focusing on decentralized compute.
Okay, that's a good introduction to it. And I suppose for people who haven't heard of decentralized storage or how that works before, so I have my PC here. I have a fairly big hard drive. I could sign up and I run software on mine that makes that space available to others. Is that a basic explanation? Or?
Yeah, I mean, just to go a little bit more into depth on how that works. So we're tapping into the idle resources that people have to offer. So for example, anything like storage or compute, if they have idle capacity and they want to earn an extra revenue stream on top of it in the form of IAG tokens, they can allocate their storage or compute to Iagon, and we're basically connecting those idle capacities to the end users that are seeking certain amount of capacity. So for example, if an end user wants high performance, high availability, and a location specifically in the EU for being GDPR compliant, or anywhere else for that matter, we connect them or match them with that specific need. So if it's a tier 1 service or a tier 2 service, whatever they specifically want, depending on the price point, of course, tier 1 services would be more expensive, tier 1 being more performant, more available, things like that. So how the storage actually works on the storage side is we take a file. Let's say if there's a file that you want to upload to Iagon, it's sharded, encrypted, sharded, and spread across according to your use cases. So if you want high performance, it's only spread across to high performant nodes. If you want the location to be specifically EU, it's only spread across to EU resource providers. And Trym has developed a unique algorithm for the sharding and the encryption mechanism. So it's called random masking. We can go into that later. But that's the general premises of the storage and how it works.
Okay. So you're saying they're high availability, and do ye have a reputation model built in, or how do, say, people like me who give resources, how do you get ranked as high availability or have a better reputation?
Yeah, I mean, for the resource providers, so what we can do is basically depending on your availability. So let's say if you have your node running 24/7, that's high availability. So you're available all the time. There's no downtimes in your node. We're not going to penalize, let's say, things that you cannot control as a node provider. But if, for example, you shut down without notice, that's kind of something that we look not nicely on, or not that users want to look nicely on. So for example, future users that want to have a high availability node, your node might not be as appealing to those users, right? So availability, something like that. Performance is more so write speed, read speed, in terms of latency as well, internet speed, these kind of things that matter when uploading and downloading a file.
Okay, and can anybody run a node or provide resources to the network, or are there certain requirements needed?
So that's the beauty of Iagon. So one of the things that we're trying to implement here is to involve everyone in this node sharing, right, concept. So basically what we're trying to do here is that anyone can be a node provider. It can be a industry player, a tier 1, or even a tier 2, even a laptop. As long as you have Linux, Windows, and Mac OS, you'll be able to run a node. And current testnet, you can try it out as well. It'll depend on the services that the end user wants, of course, but anyone is welcome to join it. Also, we're also involving regular Joes that are non-tech savvy. So how that concept works is node sharing. Basically, you can purchase a node as a regular Joe through a node operator. So Paul, if you're a node operator and you want to increase your capacity without having the upfront cost of devices, you can put in the marketplace your fixed cost of a device, whatever that might be. You can also, like Cardano pools, put a margin on terms of the revenue that you would expect or you would want from that node. So if it's 50-50 share, 60-40 share, whatever that is, and you would go into a node share, like a revenue sharing model with a node purchaser. So someone that's a regular Joe that doesn't want to maintain a node and doesn't want the heavy burden of maintaining or running a node can delegate that task to a node operator like yourself, and you can increase your capacity as a node provider and also increase your business at the same time. So this is something that we're going to be working on. And what the regular Joe is going to get is like an NFT that's going to go into a contract with the node provider. So we're trying to involve basically everyone that, especially the people that aren't involved in the space and want to be part of the ecosystem. So we're trying to involve as many people as we can.
That's interesting. So it's basically node as a service type thing where both parties go into a business partnership, but without all of the traditional, I suppose, hassle that could come with that. And one thing, just to go back on where you mentioned about if someone shuts down unexpected, how is that handled on your side? I presume there's copies of the shards on multiple machines, is there?
I'll let Trym go into that because that's the random masking.
Yeah, that's my wheelhouse.
Yes.
So yeah, basically what I did was I designed a new algorithm that better handles exactly the use case that you're describing. Because if you're using a service like IPFS, for example, the way that files are actually distributed across that system is through something called a linked list. So I'll use my little tablet to draw here. So the way that is done is you have a big file and it's split up into smaller pieces, and each piece contains a little bit of data and a way of figuring out where the next piece is, right? And then these ones are put on nodes. Now, the problem with this is if this node in the middle here goes down, then you lose this piece, which means that you lose this connection, which means that the file is unretrievable, basically. So the way to deal with this in IPFS is just to upload multiple copies. So, you know, you have 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 sort of copies of this file to make sure that it's available. The problem with that is, you know, if each file is a gigabyte in size or 10 gigabytes or terabyte, right? If you're dealing with very large data sets or stuff like this, it becomes unreasonably expensive to the customer, right? To deal with this. So what we've done in Iagon is to deal with this in a little bit of a different way. I made an algorithm that we're calling the random mask sharding algorithm. Basically, it uses a concept called error correcting codes and some randomization, which, you know, when you do the math, it all works out very well. But one of the benefits of this approach is you can recall the shards independently. So, you know, you can get this back, you can get this back, you can get this back sort of independently, and you can do that in parallel, which really improves performance because you can get all of these in from different nodes at the same time. You don't have to have them back in a line and then sort of reassemble it. Another good thing is that if you lose this thing, or if you lose this node, the data that's contained there, due to the concept of error correcting codes, if you're losing a bit of data, as long as it's not too much, you can still recover the original file, which is, you know, fantastic for this kind of use case. Because then if you lose a node, due to the randomization of the selection of the data, you're still able to recover the file with just a, you know, subset of all of the data that's been put out there. Another good thing is you don't have to have full multiple copies. Right? You don't have to have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 versions of the file out there. You can have 3.5. You can have 2.7. You can have, like, it's a continuous scale instead of a, you know, an absolute multiple of the files because of this this mechanism. So what this allows you to do is to strike the perfect balance between availability, security, performance, and price. Right, so you can sort of balance out this equation to exactly what it is that you need.
Okay, that's interesting. And just when, say, one node goes down, is there some signal that is there that means that you make a copy of that shard? So you said there you could have 2 or 3 or whatever copies. It could be 2 point something of one. Say one of them gets taken out of the network. Does something within the algorithm say that we need to make a copy of the one that's still left so you have a backup?
So that's the thing, you don't need a backup. So as long as there is, let's say that there is you can parameterize this, right? So you can set the cutoff point to whatever it is. But during testing, right, one of with the parameters that I used there, let's say that you have distributed across 35 different nodes, and then 15 of them go down at the same time, right? It's a pretty big node loss when you know, if they're not synchronized, and even if they are synchronized, you know, it's still a pretty big amount. So in that case, you're able to get the shards back from the remaining nodes. So in this case, it would be 20 nodes. You would get the data back from there. There would be gaps in the data, you know. Probably, like, statistically there would be gaps in the data, but because of the error correcting codes, basically you can sort of fill in those gaps with the way that it's encoded. So it sounds like magic, but, you know, basically what it is you add some padding to the end of it. So, you know, it's not as fancy as it might sound, but it is very, very useful for this kind of thing. So basically, you know, if there's gaps in the data, you're able to fill that back in. And you can, you know, even with if you're losing 15 nodes, right? You have 20 nodes left, you get the data from them, you fill in the gaps, and then you can just redistribute. You can create new shards from the data that you just recovered. So that's the beauty of it. So you don't really have to have copies of the specific shards that they have. You know, that's, you know, the randomness comes in there. So each shard is basically just complete randomness. But when you put them together in like this, they have this superpower basically of being able to recover it even when you're losing quite a lot of them. And then when you recover the file, you can just make new shards, send those out. You don't need to have an exact copy of the one you lost.
Okay, so yeah, it sounds like a great system to have. In terms of, so we obviously have centralized entities that do this, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, loads of different options out there, but where would you come in comparison to price points on that? I know obviously you have decentralization as a big factor of that, but are you competitive with the big guys? Far more expensive, far cheaper, or ballpark, I suppose?
I mean, in terms of cost point, we have to go closer to mainnet to make sure that we release the exact cost points. So certain use cases it really depends on the use case, right? So if you're looking at archival records, for example, that aren't being accessed all the time, you'll be able to kind of reduce price points by up to 80% because you're not accessing the data. So you don't need a tier 1 node to upload that data to. You can reduce your cost by a lot. If you're looking at different other kinds of, you can also be 40% cheaper in certain use cases, but you can also be more expensive in certain use cases because it really depends on what the end user is looking for. Are they looking for redundancy? Are they looking for higher redundancy or a specific location? Are they looking for tier 1 high performant nodes? So it really depends. So we're not trying to be the cheapest solution. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to create use cases for specific end users that require certain kind of criteria. And in all honesty, I think most of the enterprises, especially the bigger ones, won't be looking for the cheapest solution. They will be looking specifically for a secure, private, and also compliant storage protocol. They're not looking at price points when it comes to that. There will be certain use cases where they'll be looking at the price point, and we also have that use case in handy just in case if they do, right? So just to also highlight Trym's random masking, we are also using the performance, availability, trustability when we're spreading out those shards. So it's highly unlikely that it could be, but it's highly unlikely if you're storing it in a high available node or a high performant node that multiple nodes will be down. But it could be the case. And that's why the random masking will help in those cases. So just to highlight back and forth.
Yeah, I suppose obviously it'll be once you're on mainnet and you start to see how resources are used and everything like that, that you will really know. And where is the project now? What's the current status? I know you mentioned there a testnet a few times, but what's the status now?
Yeah, so the testnet's going really well. The development team is really pushing forward. We're actually very happy with our current development team in terms of how they're progressing. They've been releasing a node update every week, actually. They've been, I think it's 1.03 now, the version that's released. So we're just releasing more API calls, more testing as we go. The new testing round or sprint is going to be at the end of this month. That's the plan. And we have a plan for mainnet by the end of this quarter, latest. So that's the plan going forward. We are kind of a bit ahead of plan, but we're hoping that we finish a bit earlier. But we're not going to rush anything. We're making sure that the testnet and all the queries are answered before we launch on mainnet.
Okay, and is that for storage or compute or both? That's
for storage. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we'll be focusing on compute in the coming year, and linearly to what we're building in terms of the decentralized storage protocol is we're building dApps on top of the infrastructure to create adoption, because storage in itself is pretty boring. Not everyone's going to be just using the storage. I think it's the services that are built on top of it that are going to be utilized the most. For example, Ledger Flow. What we're doing with Ledger Flow is actually we're doing a multi-sig and also accounting system. So basically, you as an enterprise. We had a big problem ourselves in Norway in regards to that, keeping track of all the expenses, incomes, and relaying that to the accountant and auditor. That's actually much tougher task than it sounds like, especially explaining it to the auditors and the accountants which have no idea of blockchain ledger, especially on Cardano, which is very complicated compared to other chains, right? So when what we're trying to do is simplify the whole process where you as an enterprise or even as an end user can control all your expenses and track all your invoices, send invoices, receive invoices through this multi-sig, and also make payment plans, monthly payment plans, things like that, where you can easily access it, and also your enterprise that have the keys to it can also access and create payments and things like that. So just simplifying the whole process and making sure we relay that to the accountant in a simple way in the traditional sense. Yeah. So that's ledger flow, and we're using the infrastructure of the storage on top for the invoices and things like that. So users are unknowingly using the storage as a service, right?
Yeah, I think one thing that'll really stand to you as well is the GDPR compliance, because it's becoming bigger and bigger, and from being a small part of a traditional startup at the minute, it's a hassle trying to make sure you have everything and figure everything out. And when we're looking for servers and to make sure everything's compliant, it can be a bit of a headache. Where if you have a service that you have all of that there that someone can just plug into, then that's a really good start. And onto running a node then. So we've covered already that anybody can start up a node, but you do have to have the IAG token to do that as well. Do you want to talk in around that? Or maybe it's not finalized until mainnet, but just a high level of what will be needed.
Sure. Maybe Trym wants to highlight it, and I could add some thoughts at the end, maybe.
Yeah, sure. So the general idea is that when you're setting up the storage node, you need a bit of incentive to keep going, to make sure that you have the right a good performance, and that you maintain the device that you're committing for the resources. So when you're setting up a node, when you register it for receiving the rewards coming from the marketplace, so the way that you do this is you set up the node. You can sort of select how much or how little you want to reveal about yourself, about the node location, and all of these things. The more the more hoops you jump through or are willing to sort of show about yourselves, the more sort of trustworthy you might seem, or the better performance you have over time, of course, plays in as well. But yeah, when you're setting up a node, you stake a certain amount of IAG to be eligible to receive rewards from the storage that you're committing. So when a user is, say for example, take the GDPR use case. As a node operator, you set up your node and you say, okay, I'm based in Germany. This is, I don't want to pass KYC, but this is a proof of IP, and this is, all of these things that the node is actually factually based in Germany. You stake some IAG token, and now a company needs GDPR compliant storage, and they say, okay, we need these files to be stored within Germany, and then they subscribe to the storage, upload all the files, and now your node is contributing to the storage that they are paying for, right? Of course, if someone says, I need something stored in Europe, Germany is a part of Europe, so you're contributing to that as well, but then you're in a much bigger pool. So the more sort of specifics you can add about your node, the more you're going to get out of these customers, or the bigger share of the revenue from the customers that have these specific needs, right? So the subscription that comes from the or the revenue that comes from the customers is funneled to the node operators that are hosting the storage that they use. It's locked up for a period of time, and then it's sort of released periodically. While it's locked up, it will generate a revenue sort of on top of the stuff that's locked up. So it's not an idle asset. It's actually used to boost your yield. and then you're able to withdraw over time.
So just to add to that, in terms of the staking, the amount hasn't been finalized yet for how much it's going to be, but we want to make it, we don't want to make it too high and we don't want to make it too low either. It has to be some kind of trust bond, but it has to be something that both the protocol and the people are comfortable with, I think. So just to highlight that fact, we want as many nodes as possible to participate in the ecosystem. So it's important not to have an extremely high or extremely low amount for that. Also, if you're staking IAG, you do earn protocol revenues from Iagon. So Iagon takes a certain amount of commission, which is 10% of connecting between the marketplace and the end users. And the commission is actually also not all going to Iagon. It's partly going to buying back tokens, IAG tokens for rewarding node providers. It's also partially going to IAG stakers that aren't participating in the node operations, but are still getting some of the protocol revenues as well. So there's multiple ways, and people that are paying for the storage will be paying in either ADA or stables. That way, the commission or the funds that are coming in are a stable asset in a sense, even though they're earning yield on top of it. Example use case, for example, would be, let's say, for example, NFTs. If, for example, Arweave, for example, has something called PermaWeb, which means you can store NFTs, quote unquote, forever, but they're paying ahead of time. They're paying many, many years ahead of time. But we don't pay out the resource provider in this use case right away. We pay over time. So what we can do with that upfront payment is earn yield from that upfront payment and also allocate that to the storage providers and the IAG stakers. So there's multiple ways that the IAG utility is being used in this, I would say, this circular economy.
Okay, there was loads of questions popping into my head there. That's what I was typing so that I remember a few of them. I like that there's revenue generated by the company, and that's used to put back into token holders or back into people running the nodes. A lot of times in crypto, we see that it's the same money just flows around within the ecosystem and there's nothing external coming in. So long term, that's not a great business model. But when you actually have customers that are outside of crypto, one thing you mentioned, they'll be paying with ADA or stables. Will you be accepting, say, credit card or people outside of crypto that want to use the storage solution? Will they have an option too?
There's definitely going to be enterprises that are going to be using this without wanting to be involved in the crypto side of it. So we would definitely have that option open, and that will also be translated to protocol revenues.
Yeah, that's good. And just back to the node then for running it. So one concern I seen, you kind of touched on it there. One concern I seen when looking into it was people are worried that the amount of IAG needed to run the node will be too high. Will that number, so you will set it initially, but the prices within crypto are volatile. So will that number change over time? So say the price of Iagon goes up 10 times or goes down, whatever percentage, will the number needed for a node move with that, not to alienate new people trying to get in?
I completely agree. That's like one of the things that we're also looking at is the price point of IAG. So it will be dependent on the price of IAG, but at the same time, we do want to incentivize early adopters. So meaning that people that are getting in early shouldn't be penalized in a sense that that later people that are coming in a little bit later at a time are kind of easier to get in per se. So we do want the loyal customer flow, especially at the beginning, to be certain way incentivized, and we're putting in some mechanisms for that as well.
Okay, yeah, I suppose as the utilization of the service isn't as big at the start, then you want the people who have been supporters to get paid. And as everything grows and there's more companies using the service, then you could allow more people into it then at that stage. And will it be a set number of tokens, the same number for everyone, or will the number of tokens you lock up have an impact on the rewards you earn for providing a node?
Trym, you want to get into that?
Yeah, sure. So the general idea is to have a kind of floor that is movable with the price, right? So kind of similar to Babel fees or something like this, but where it is, it's a reasonable level to get in on the base level. The idea as well was, if you have a lot more tokens, you want to stake a lot more with your node, that will improve your yield from the storage that you're committing and from the revenue share model.
Okay, so the rewards you earn will be a combination of the resources you give as well as the number of tokens.
Yes.
Yes. So, as a function of the whole system flow, right? So if the whole protocol is doing really well and you have staked a lot of tokens, then, your share of the revenue that you're sharing is greater. So, your reward is greater, right? And then, if you stake more tokens, obviously your percentage reward from that is also larger.
Okay, and final kind of part about the nodes, is there slashing involved in it? So there's some people who really don't like it. Some people like it as a mechanism to control it. Just actually for anyone who doesn't understand it, it's like when on other staking models where when you lock up your tokens, if the node goes down or if there's something wrong with the node and it's the node operator's fault, then your tokens you've locked up can be slashed. So you can lose some of them, where with Cardano staking, you can never lose the ADA you're staking. You can only gain on that. So with your model where I suppose the reliability is very important, have you looked at that, or is that a part of it?
I think Trym has, and I have talked about that a few times. Basically, we understand that node operation is not a smooth process. It's not an easy process either, right? So there are certain things you can't control, maybe a lightning strike in the area, or whatever it might be. That's something out of the node operator's control. So we have some mechanisms also built, and Trym can go into that in terms of how we're looking at we don't want to call it slashing. We don't want to slash rewards if it's, for example, node operator goes down without warning and shuts down their protocol. That's something different. But if something is out of their control, we definitely want to not negate their kind of reputation because of that. Trym, you maybe want to go into a little bit more in there.
Yeah, sure. So, in terms of the tokens and sort of everything involved in this process, right? You have the amount that you stake, which is the IAG tokens that you stake with the node. You also have the revenue, right, that you're earning from this storage or the resources that you're providing, and you also have the yield, right, that you're getting on top of the revenue, and in terms of the revenue sharing from the protocol. So the idea is, we need to make sure that the system, like with the random mask sharding algorithm, the system itself, the storage network, is pretty resilient against node shutoffs, right? So it's not a catastrophe if a couple of nodes goes down and then comes back on a couple of hours later. But you have to avoid. So you have to put in some safety mechanisms to make sure that not everyone shuts down at the same time, basically, right? So the idea is that you dig in from the top, and you try to keep the penalties as low as possible and have as many recovery mechanisms as possible, right? So the idea is that you start with yield, move down to the revenue that you're generating, and the last stop is the actual tokens that you're staking. If your node goes down for whatever reason, and then you put it back up, and then you continue operating, and everything seems fine, then the idea is that you will actually regenerate the stuff that has been slashed or sort of temporarily locked up, But if you never come back and we never sort of hear anything from you again, you will sort of go down on this scale until eventually your whole thing is drained. But that is the absolute worst case scenario. If someone literally just makes the thing, gets a bit of revenue, a bit of yield, so sort of all of these things start stacking up, and then they just cut it cold turkey without saying anything. That's the worst case scenario. But we're trying to set up as many mechanisms as possible to help people that just get an accidental internet cutoff, or something happens, right, that is really out of their control, and they're able to either try and do something to get set back up, or they report this thing and sort of get involved and like actually show some proof of life. We're going to try and not penalize unnecessarily, right? So it's there is a sense of slashing, but it's not the traditional like one strike and you're out kind of thing.
Yeah. I think a balance is. I'm not completely against slashing. Some people are, but I think with certain things, it's no harm to have an incentive like that, as long as it's lenient and it's not like that. My kid trips across the wire of the computer and pulls it out and it goes offline for 5 minutes, or that doesn't kill your revenue generation. So that covers a lot of the questions that I had. I'm just looking at bullet points here that I wanted to make sure I covered. The next few months, what does it look like for you guys?
Yeah. So first, focus is on storage mainnet, and we're focusing on that first. We have the multi-sig actually coming out very soon for testing. So we're planning hopefully by the end of the month, but latest probably mid next month for multi-sig testing. We have the Ledger Flow app that we're going to be updating also next month. So it'll be more features available there. And mind everyone, this is in kind of initial testing phase. So we're encouraging everyone to give feedback and where we can improve on certain aspects. After that, once the storage mainnet is out, we also have the two proposals, which is Statur and Fluxion. Hopefully, if they get approved, then we'll be also working on them. We'll be working on Statur regardless, if it gets approved or not, but that will be more so focus on Iagon only instead of the general Web3 ecosystem, because the proposal actually is proposal is for the Web3 ecosystem, where you can transfer your reputation throughout the Web3 ecosystem instead of just Iagon. So the first main focus will be just the performance, availability, and trustability, things like that we're going to be taking into specifically focused on Iagon if it doesn't go through. And then we're also working on the decentralized compute, and we think it's the easier side than the storage. The storage is actually, we think it's more complicated than the compute side. So we hope to have a decentralized compute ready by next year as well. And then we're going to be focusing on Agora after that. Agora is definitely a beast to tackle. It's going to be definitely a lot of things that we have to go through to make sure that we do it the right way. And also it's going to be run by the community. We're going to have a governance plan next year as well, late next year. So where we're going to have all these mechanisms where they can be voted on and things like that. So, and then we're going to have the ecosystem fund. Once the governance is open, we're going to have the ecosystem fund open, which means that people can build dApps on the infrastructure and vote on funding for specifically something like Catalyst, where you're funding projects specifically that are building on Cardano. That's on Cardano and Iagon, basically.
Busy few months or a few years maybe ahead. So the links for Catalyst and stuff like that, I can put them below for anyone who wants to read up more on that. And just, you said at the very start actually that you bridged into Cardano. Are you primarily on Cardano now, or will there be a cross-chain future, or does it really matter for the service?
Yeah, I mean, first we're focusing on Cardano, and once we get that all the features and services out there, we're definitely going cross-chain. And Statur is actually something that we're looking for cross-chain as well. So there's a lot of things that we're looking to do in the future, which will be crossing, but the focus currently remains Cardano.
Great. Trym, any final thoughts from you before we close it out?
No, I think we covered things pretty well. Every single thing of the, what we've been talking about the last 5 minutes, right? The Fluxion, Statur, the sort of future plans, like all of this could be an hour talk in themselves, right? So, yeah, I think people should reach out if they have any questions. I'd love to talk more about this and other things that are going on in this space. I recommend people go and check out the Catalyst proposals as well. The only sort of maybe thing I wanted to touch on, because I just saw some people mention this on Twitter for the Stature Catalyst proposal, the reputation model for Cardano. So some people, were concerned that this might seem like social credit or something like this that you see from CCP, right? Which is not the case. The point of this thing is to allow people that want to be node operators or service providers in general to gain a sort of, it's kind of like a Yelp review, right? Or something like this, but it is pseudonymous. So you can opt into the service and you can tie it to your wallet or to your handler or whatever it is that you want. And then you can, if you're providing a service like operating a node, like development, for example, you could have consultants, smart contract devs, whatever it is that you need, sign up for this thing and say, okay, I can provide the service. People can hire them based on this reputation. It's like you go to their page, you see, okay, this guy says he's a developer. These people are in his portfolio. Maybe this guy seems pretty reasonable. Or if a node operator, he has 18 nodes with 100% uptime and 16 gigabyte line, that's probably a very good node operator to get involved with, right? So it's going to be that's sort of the system in question. It's not a matter of trying to track people or do anything like that, right?
Yeah, that's a great point that Trym makes. I think that it's important to highlight that it's not a social credit. It's more so incentivizing positivity and also highlighting the smaller players that are in Cardano. So I think that there's a lot of node pool operators that are very small in nature, but are doing very well in the ecosystem, providing great services. And I think that we're just trying to highlight those and making sure that other protocols notice these kind of what they have done for the community and what they've done in the past, right? And just trying to highlight those performances by the specific service provider.
Because I think it will be very beneficial for the space in general. Because imagine you're creating a new project, you need some node operators for whatever reason. For example, oracles, right? They need Charlie 3 have these decentralized node operators for the Oracle service. Where do they find these guys? This would be a place to find these guys, basically. And for the stake pool operators or anyone who's doing something for the Cardano community, but they think they can do more, it's a great place to sign up and see what other options are there. Like, how can I contribute as well as whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I suppose a lot of the best technical people aren't always the ones that get the airtime out there or get the credit they deserve for what they build. And a lot of people build really good stuff in the background that isn't seen by the public. It's only seen by, say, the likes of me, who runs pools, who I use tools that are built by other people. So it's great that people like that can get more airtime that is deserved. So I think we've covered a lot of stuff here today. Hopefully it's answered lots of questions for people out there. It's definitely given me a lot of good insights into the project and answered pretty much all that I have now. We did talk before that we might do a live stream in 2-3 months' time. We'll see where the project is and maybe make that one a live stream rather than pre-recorded, so people can come in and ask any questions they have. Guys, thanks very much for your time. Anyone watching, please do share it out. Let people know what's going on here. Give it a like, comment, questions, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Thanks, guys. We'll talk soon.